Hello, and welcome to you all. I'm Lonnie Bunch, Secretary of the Smithsonian Institution, and I'm thrilled to be here with you today to give you a little taste of the excitement that working in museums can offer. Museum professional might not sound like the most glamorous job, but I can tell you it has given me more than a lifetime's worth of excitement and fulfillment. Museums are places that will constantly surprise you, where you can commit to lifelong learning and curiosity, where you can serve a public sorely in need of the collections, the expertise, and the hope we offer. For me, there was no choice. I've always been captivated by history. For a long time, I thought I'd be a professor, but after some time in the university, I realized that history was too important to stay just in the hands of historians. I wanted a role where I could bring that history to the broadest community possible. I wanted a role that offered me a broad canvas to reach people, to contextualize, synthesize, inform, educate, and inspire. That has been the thrill of my career, building spaces where we can take history, culture, science, and art and make them directly relevant and useful to our audiences. Museums are places that engage the public, that help our audiences grow and respond to the challenges around them. The past year, the COVID 19 pandemic has taught me enormously about how, even when our buildings are closed, museums can be the glue that holds the nation together. Smithsonian educators offer distance learning resources to families and teachers who are now locked at home. Our researchers studied the short and long term impacts of the pandemic on our country and the world around us. Our curators offer digital tours and programming to make world class collections available to anyone, anywhere. And our staff were out in the streets during protests, collecting signs, masks, and oral histories of those involved. All this is to say that it's a common misconception that museums only celebrate the past. We are as much about today and tomorrow as we are about yesterday. Working in museums is about making a direct impact and making a community, a city, a country better. If you're interested in art, science, history, or culture, museums have a place for you. Whether you're drawn into research, collections, preservation, curation, design, education, media, museums have it. We have something to offer. Today, you're going to hear about how many opportunities there are to join this work, how many ways you can make an impact. Thank you for joining us and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, Secretary Bunch, for the wonderful introduction to the magical world of museums here at the Smithsonian. How can you get a job in a museum, you might be asking yourself? Well, we hope to provide you some answers and insights at our third career day. And I suspect that because you've signed up for this program, you're the kind of person we're looking for. You are likely curious, public-spirited, team-oriented, and somebody who would bring diverse experiences and perspectives to all you do, including your work. I can tell you I love museums. They're magical places where you can learn about yourself and others, as well as cities and states and countries, and even the world around us. And the work is always different. We work in many different environments, whether they're offices or galleries, storage spaces, labs, outdoors, and even at community events. Our work takes us to different kinds of environments. And again, whether you're interested in art or history or science, the Smithsonian has a little bit of everything for people. So come join us. We truly need you. I invite you to enjoy today's program. Be sure to ask lots of questions. And in closing, I thank the terrific panelists and the fabulous Smithsonian American Art Museum production team for putting this all together for you. I want to note the work of Gloria Kenyon, Ilan Ivora, Jeff Kors, and many other staff who serve on our Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access Task Force. Enjoy the program.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to Lonnie and Stephanie for your opening remarks. I'm Ilani Vora, Program Assistant for the Luce Foundation Center here at SAM and co-chair of SAM's IDEA Task Force. At SAM, IDEA stands for Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, and Access. It is essentially an institutional effort to make SAM a more egalitarian and non-discriminatory place to work. Through programs such as Building Your Future, we hope to consistently practice transparency and transform what our workplace looks like. Thank you all again for taking the time to attend our first virtual iteration of Building Your Future. This afternoon, we have an awesome group of panelists from SAM and SI Gardens, Media Conservator Dan Finn, Assistant Dosing Coordinator Ashana Franklin, Horticulturalist Virginia Thaxton, Graphic Designer and Exhibitions Grace Lopez, and graphic designer and publications, Karen Ciatris. To get things started, I'd like to introduce our first panelist, Dan Finn, Media Conservator here at SAM. Dan graduated with a master's degree in moving image archiving and preservation from NYU. He is the first full-time conservator at SAM to specialize in time-based media art. And while at SAM, Dan has designed the Media Conservation Lab and refine policies for documentation and conservation of time-based media art. Dan, I'll give it to you.
Thank you, Alon, for that lovely introduction. Hello, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be with you all today and get to speak to you. I'll just jump right in so that the other panelists have plenty of time. So, yeah, my job is media conservator. That's my position here. And so I'm in the art conservation department of the Smithsonian American Art Museum. And my specialty is, as Alon said, time-based media art. And that term, for anybody that might not be familiar with it, time-based media is a catch-all in the museum world and cultural heritage world for media that change over time. And at the Smithsonian American Art Museum, that includes artworks made using film, analog video, digital video, video games, we have some video games, other kinds of computer software, computer hardware, and that sort of thing, newer technology. And yeah, as Alon mentioned, I have a background at NYU, their moving image archiving and preservation. And that's a bit of an atypical background for an art conservator. And that's because the time-based media specialty is relatively new and so has not been as well represented at traditional art conservation programs, although that's changing. That's been changing over the last decade, and places in Europe and now a program at NYU offers a specialty in a traditional art conservation sense. The Moving Image Archiving and Preservation program itself focused on dealing with video, with film, with audio, and digital preservation. And so that prepared students to manage those kinds of collections in a variety of situations, all kinds of museums, libraries, archives, even consultant companies doing private work, big entertainment companies that have large collections that they're managing, other kinds of private collections. So it's it was a very flexible background, really focusing on the technology itself. I developed an interest in the museum field through my graduate school program. I first learned that the job that I now have was a thing that people could even do in school. And that was at a class at NYU called Handling Complex Media. And we had a group assignment where we interviewed an artist. And through that process, we were supposed to make preservation recommendations for an artwork that artist made. And I loved that class and I loved that assignment. The artist had made this really crazy work using digital video, using a computer, playing the video back with a projector. And on the computer, there was special software so that they could map the video onto a sculpture to get the dimensions of the video just right to match the sculpture. And wow, really highlighted for me the vast possibilities that new technology was offering people for creative expression, all the things that people could do that I never thought of before. And also critically, what I thought was interesting is the vast number of ways that that sort of project can break down and fail as technology changes, as hardware fails, or as things become obsolete. What kind of things do I do on a daily basis? My schedule at the museum is mostly dictated by exhibition schedules and incoming acquisitions. And that will prioritize which artworks that I need to focus on. And if an artwork is coming in, which then we're considering to bring it into the collection, we're going to send the artist a questionnaire. We're going to try and get as much information about how the artwork was made, how it works, what the artist intended for it, how to be exhibited, what kind of atmosphere is around the piece, what kind of experience that the viewers should have. And then we try to determine what the biggest associated risks with that artwork are going to be, and also interview the artists and try and get a sense of what their comfort level might be if, say, this component A fails. Is that something that you're comfortable with us replacing down the line? Or is that something that we need to maintain as long as possible because it is a crucial key characteristic of what you want this artwork to be doing? And then as far as exhibition goes, that's very fun because I often get to help with installation, making sure that everything is working in the gallery well. For some things, that means I get to figure out how the piece works, set some stuff up, do some testing in my lab before we put it in the gallery for public enjoyment. And that's a very rewarding part of the job for me, is being able to figure that out. So yeah, that, as I say, that's probably one of the things I like best about what I do, because I like learning constantly. And each artwork in our collection, I can think of as its own puzzle. And, you know, an artwork the artist might have some unique demands for exhibition. For instance, we have a piece that the artist demands we display it on VHS tape. And for maybe some of you have never heard of VHS tape, maybe some of you are all too intimately familiar with it, like me, and it's finicky. So just to say, it was a strange demand. There can be all kinds of demands like that. Also, it's always a pleasure when an artist uses technology that I'm unfamiliar with, and I get to learn about that. Or if an artist uses something that I do know well, but they use it in an innovative or unfamiliar way. And so I always feel like I'm getting to figure something out, and that is as engaging as it is challenging. And I think the last question I'll get into here is, what is an unexpected skill set that I use in the museum? So this might take a bit. So I got into playing electric guitar growing up. I still play, and I am moderately obsessed with effects and effect pedals, taking the guitar, making it distorted, making it echo, making it reverb, make it do all kinds of things. And that is neither here nor there really, but it did have a surprisingly helpful impact on not only my work in grad school and learning everything in grad school about video preservation, audio preservation, film preservation, digital preservation, but now at work, for when I'm getting my head around a complicated media artwork, complicated installation. And that's because a lot of media technology, whether it's a video, whether it's audio, whatever it might be, digital signals, at some level, you are looking at an electronic signal. You're looking at voltage. One device creates some electronic signal and sends it to something else, and that sends it to something else. And that whole process ends up with a movie on your television or a song coming out of your speakers. And there's always a logic to that electronic manipulation. And that figuring that logic out can be key to the heart of what makes an artwork special. And weirdly enough, it's been very successful for me that knowing about guitar effects, which is its own signal manipulation, is a place that I can routinely go where I can get my feet down on the ground and get my bearings to figure out the logic of something that I'm unfamiliar with. And so that's a weird, I thought, weird thing to be able to be as useful as it was in my professional life. And probably a sign that I'm doing the right thing, that all these things are able to coalesce into my field. So thank you. That's all I have. And I really appreciate being able to talk to everyone. Thanks.
Thank you, Dan. My name again is Jeffrey Kors. I'm the docent coordinator at SAM and co-chair of the SAM Idea Task Force with Elon. Next, I'd like to introduce our next panelist, Ashana Franklin, who is the assistant docent coordinator at SAM. Ashana graduated with a degree in anthropology from the University of North Carolina at Greensboro. She started her career in museums at the Discovery Place Science in Charlotte, North Carolina, as a docent and then public programs educator. In 2017, Ashana traveled to Zambia to volunteer with the Peace Corps. Upon her return from the Peace Corps, she made her way back into the museum field and as an assistant docent coordinator for the Smithsonian American Art Museum.
Thank you for that introduction, Jeff. As Jeff said, my name is Ashana Franklin, and I am the assistant docent coordinator for SAM. And I've been with SAM for almost 2 years. It will be 2 years next month. Some of my responsibilities and my daily tasks include scheduling all of the requested programs that come to our main building that we share with the National Portrait Gallery, as well as our Renwick Gallery. Now, the programs that we schedule are in person as well as these days virtual. And in addition to scheduling, as you all may have put 2 and 2 together, I work closely with Jeff Kors, and I help him to co-facilitate the docents as far as getting training materials ready and prepping them for meetings. Now, a little bit about my background and how I got into the museum field. So as he stated, I do have a background in anthropology, specifically with a focus in cultural anthropology. Now, when getting my degree, we went through class and we were always told, you can do whatever you want to with this degree. And then at the end of the day, you're like, okay, but what? So after graduation, I did some research and found what I thought would be the best place where I could utilize my degree. So I embarked on a hunt to find the best museum where I thought it would be most beneficial to me. Now, as you can imagine, going from a cultural anthropology background to a science museum is definitely a big leap, but it worked out in my favor. When I started at Discovery Place Science, I started as a docent, and I started temporarily part-time to work at one particular exhibition. And then after, I was asked to stay on as a public programs educator. And this was a full-time position that included conducting public-facing programs while we were doing experiments, as well as handling different types of animals and reading scripts to go along with the programs that we were involved in. I had done none of this before. This is my first experience with this type of work. So that opened my eyes to what museums can offer. As stated before, lifelong learning, as well as experiences. Working as a public programs educator allowed me to face my fears of public speaking It also allowed me to gain experiences that I never thought I would have. I'm sorry. I lost my train of thought, but that's okay. After my time as a public programs presenter, I did make my way to Peace Corps, specifically Zambia, and I was there for about 2 years doing nothing that pertained to museum work. But while I was there, I was able to get the experience of the museums that they had to offer in that country. And I enjoy seeing that because it gives you a chance to see what other museums have to offer, as well as what they can bring to you and the education that you can receive either by attending or working. So after my time in Peace Corps, I thought, I really want to go back to the museum field. So I made my way to SAM, and scheduling programs was not on the forefront of my mind, but I do enjoy my job. I enjoy working with the docents, seeing them present on the artworks, and just hearing them exude this wealth of knowledge. You can see the passion that they have for the work that they do. And I thoroughly enjoy that. I also enjoy getting the feedback and comments from the guests who go on their tours, or who have requested tours for larger groups such as school groups, and how the children have enjoyed hearing the docents speak, how much they learned and what they gained from it. Another aspect of my job that I like is that, again, I have been involved in so many different aspects that I never thought I would be involved in. My job is within our education department, and I specifically work on the interpretation team. And currently we are conducting, or creating, I should say, a card game for seniors within the DMV area, a card game that utilizes our collection and help seniors keep their development as far as memory and cognitive abilities. Now, I know many of you are wondering how or what may be some of the best ways to get your foot into the door when it comes to the museum field. And here are a couple of my thoughts on that. First, if you are able to, explore as many museums as you can, as many different types of museums as you can, and see what types of positions they have to offer, and see where you may be able to fit in there and what actually would appeal to you. And in doing so, again, if you're able to, apply for internships as well as work study programs. Many of my colleagues started as interns within the Smithsonian, or within the Smithsonian American Art Museum specifically, and they are still there. They've been there for years because they have been able to grow from an intern into a full-time staff member. And lastly, if you are able to come across someone who would be willing to mentor you in order to gain the experience as well as the education that you might need to be successful at the job you would want to do in the museum field, I highly suggest reaching out to them and seeing if you and them could connect to do so. I would like to thank you all for attending today and provide me with the opportunity to share my experiences with you. I wish you all the best of luck in your future endeavors and in finding a museum and a position that will work best for you. Thank you all for your time, and I wish you a very wonderful day.
Thank you, Ashana. The next panelist we have is Virginia Thaxton, who is a horticulturalist with the Smithsonian Gardens. Virginia Thaxton has a BS in biology and an MS in horticulture. She did her undergraduate thesis on ecology of high altitude tropical tree species in her native Colombia, and later conducted research in plant physiology while working at the Smithsonian Tropical Research Institute in Panama. Virginia's graduate thesis focused on irrigation and container-grown ornamentals at Louisiana State University, and over the years, she has gained plant production and care experience from working at nurseries, garden centers, and historic gardens in Puerto Rico, Louisiana, and Maryland. Since 2018, she has been a horticulturalist with the interior section of Smithsonian Gardens. She and her colleagues display and maintain all the indoor tropical plants in Sam's Kogod Courtyard and across in Smithsonian museums here in Washington, D.C.
Hi, thank you, Jeff. Good afternoon, everyone. Buenas tardes a todos. So as Jeff says, I'm the horticulturist who takes care of all the tropical plantings in the Kogod Courtyard. The Kogod Courtyard is that space that's in the center of the building where the Smithsonian American Art Museum is housed. And the Kogod Courtyard a few years ago was enclosed by a glass roof that created a conservatory environment. It provides wonderful light and comfortable temperatures all year long for these tropical plants, which on any given day in the courtyard, I can have about 1,000 houseplants, from 50 different species and cultivars. And we also have 12 big tropical trees that are scattered on the planters that cover this 28,000 square feet magical space. Is magical to me. So I take care of plants for a living. How did I get here? I have a bachelor's degree in biology from my home country, Colombia, and also a master's in horticulture from Louisiana State University. Over the years, I took many classes in basic science, biology, chemistry, physics, statistics. I wrote 2 theses, one as an undergrad, one as a grad student. I just love plants. I love science, right? So I was so into schooling. Then I got to work at garden centers, nurseries, plant nurseries for production, and also historic gardens here in DC. Luckily now I'm working for Smithsonian Gardens, which has been accredited as a museum in its own right. And we call it a museum without walls. Why? Because mostly it refers to our outdoor gardens. But I do work for the interior section. And what we do is we do the interior scaping in all the museums in the mall and nearby that belong to Smithsonian. So interior scaping means we place beautiful plants in containers inside the museums. But coming back to the courtyard, because they are not in just plain containers in the courtyard. What does it mean to take care of the plantings on a daily basis? What do I do? So I am housed at the greenhouse facilities for Smithsonian Gardens, but I travel downtown every day to take care of plants in all the museums. At the courtyard, I water everything in all 8 planters twice a week. Then I groom once a week. Grooming means get rid of all the yellow, dead leaves. It also means pruning the big trees. I get to prune them when they need it. I fertilize everything monthly. And I also carry out the integrated pest management program and the scouting. This is to make sure that the plants are healthy and free of pests. So when the plant is not performing very well, is not happy where it is, sometimes they have a longevity that's determined by certain factors, then we get the plant back to the greenhouse facility and new plants come in. With my team, we do all the design and installation of all the new plantings and any change outs that we need to do throughout the year. It happens multiple times. Some of them coincide with seasonal addition of color, for example, in the form of poinsettias, mums, spring bulbs. So we change the landscaping in the courtyard quite often. We also have to replenish the soil in the planters from time to time because it starts to compact. I walk around when I'm transplanting or grooming my plants. And also the organic matter decomposes in the soil. So we come in with pallets and bags of soil and replenish the planters. We also need to shake in and wash, hose down the trees. Why? Because we're simulating wind and rain. These trees are not used to being in an indoor space, so they accumulate dust and we have to check them and hose them down every 6 months. So all in all, I got to keep my eyes on every single plant in there all the time to make sure they're looking their best for people to enjoy them. I love my job. It's so uplifting to be surrounded by plants. Watering is super therapeutical, especially when you're in such a beautiful space surrounded by 2 wonderful art museums. It's just great to be there. And no matter how strenuous my job can be at times, and it can be lots of physical activity and heavy lifting, every time I receive a compliment, about the plants, about how things look, or I hear a visitor walk through the doors and you just hear this audible wow. So like it makes my day. I know the place looks wonderful. I know I'm doing something that's important to make people smile while they are taking rest from strolling the museums. They're in the courtyard and some people sit down to eat at the cafe, and it's just a wonderful place to be in. So let's talk about some of the skills that required for my job. Most of them rely on my ability to use the scientific method and protocols to troubleshoot any sign or symptom that tells me the plant is not happy there. I need to change it. I need to do something about it. Those are keen observation, constant observation. Also knowledge of correct plant tissue and water collecting for analysis. Also how to measure environmental factors. We do measure temperature, relative humidity in the courtyard, as well as having an accurate water technique for different types of plants. There's a little bit of everything. All of them are tropical, but there's a little bit of everything in the planters. And as I water with a hose, they're hand water, because I have to determine what kind of plant is that and how much water it needs. Not all of them need the same amount of water. But also you need things like being dexterous as pruning, planting, shoveling, landscaping in general, the place. And one of the skill sets that I find unexpected for me in this environment is I had to be trained on a vertical lift, because it's the only way I can reach the canopy of the trees to take care of them, to monitor them. Normally, if you're outside, you do this differently, but in the courtyard, I'm indoors, I just have a nice smooth floor and I can drive the vertical lift and access my trees. And that's something that's different than any other horticulturist would do on the outdoors. So those are sort of like the horticulture related skill sets. But since Smithsonian Garden is a museum and our mission is not only to beautify, but to educate, I also get to participate in exhibit development and production. So choosing the theme, doing the research for the script, and all of the information that goes into informational panels that we put up. Then we help design it and install all the displays, because we want to tell stories about plant and science. And in the courtyard, we do that. And it's just wonderful. I like that part too. In that regard, I'm more of a museum worker than my other duties. One of the challenges I encounter by working with plants, soil, and water in a museum environment is the fact that one must be extra careful about the cleanliness, about not creating messes, of course, out of respect for the collections that are held in the nearby space. And for example, my team shares the loading dock, the freight elevators with all the museum staff. Through there, you know, they move around very valuable, art that they need to be careful about, and I'm moving plants and soil. So we have to be careful. We have to be careful so both worlds can coexist. And it's just important to be conscious of that. Something that has surprised me while working there is how awesome it is to work in a museum where the staff, everybody appreciates what you do and are very supportive of teamwork in general. I, for example, get to interact with the facilities and security departments a lot, but sometimes also with visitor services and the rest of the museum staff. And everyone is willing to help, to lend a hand. We need to work in unison to make the museum shine in all aspects. So teamwork is super essential, and I enjoy that. So to wrap up my talk to you today, my piece of advice for any young student that's looking for a career is, when it comes to choosing it, I believe the key to being successful is being passionate about it. And you can tell that I am. It's not a cliche, because if you're happy, you're going to give it your all. Your performance is going to be awesome, and things are going to look the way that people want them to look. But you're also going to be more willing to be part of a team. That's very important, as I said. So always pursue your passion and don't give up, because it might take a couple of attempts to realize what it is and to find yourself doing what you want. But also don't be reluctant to try something different or a different aspect of a traditional job like the one you chose. For example, in my case, I'm a horticulturist, and unlike most of the other panelists, I did not develop early on like an interest in museum field per se, but I'm a plant scientist. But I was given the opportunity to do a job that I love in a place that has a museum environment with all the art and the wonderful culture. So I got intrigued, and museums are cool. So I said, why not? I mean, it's different, but I took that opportunity. And it's been fascinating to see how a horticulturist, like I said, with water, dirt, and plants can work in a museum environment and make it work and coexist with everybody else that's doing this wonderful art. So it just go for it, because I think when art and science are blended together, it's a wonderful combination. So that is me. I get to bring nature indoors to enhance the museum experience. And that's very, very, very fulfilling to me. And I hope that you guys all hear today things that are going to make you think about what am I passionate about? What is going to fulfill me? And there's plenty of opportunity to do very many different things at the Smithsonian Museums. So thank you.
Thank you, Virginia. Our next panelist is Grace Lopez, who is exhibits graphic designer, also here at SAM. Grace graduated with a master's degree in arts management from American University. She designs, produces, and installs exhibition wall labels, large vinyl wall texts, and large interior and exterior signs for the Smithsonian American Art Museum's temporary exhibitions and collections. She has created exterior building banners and graphics for SAM's popular public programs. Grace began her Smithsonian career at the National Zoo and the Exhibitions Department. She's a founding member of SHAPE, the Smithsonian Employee Fitness Committee, and has illustrated the Employee Walk t-shirts since SHAPE's beginnings in 2005. She also does design work for the Smithsonian Unsung Hero Committee. Before working for the Smithsonian, Grace was a silk screener at a local DC graphic services company, providing custom color graphic proofs. Take it away, Grace.
Well, thank you for such a nice introduction, and glad you could all be here today. And so, as Jeff said, my position is exhibit graphics designer, and I sort of liken it to if you're setting up like a stage, like a theater design thing. You know, it's specific to you have to sort of create an atmosphere that goes with the particular time period and that particular artist. And I work along with the 3D designers to sort of help create that atmosphere and pick appropriate typefaces that would work with that particular artist and the time frame that they were around. And so my typical day, let's see, it kind of depends. Sometimes there's rotations where you need labels for, there's a last minute label. And so that's for permanent collections. You have to, and you match the wall color. And so I do that, but a big chunk of the work is for the temporary shows, and a couple of which are coming up, opening in October. And so my work is sort of a combination of digital, working on the computer, and then manual, where you actually make what you've designed. So that, to me, is the whole appeal of this kind of work. It's a very rare job where you kind of get you pick the font and then you design it, and then you get to print it on the large format printer, and you mount it and all that. Then you go to the museum and you put it on the wall. So, and it's very satisfying. And then you get to see how the public interacts with what you've done. So I've been doing it for ages. I started when I was 2. No, not really, but I actually was at the zoo for 14 years and then here now for 14. So it's like, oh my God, where did the time go? But anyway, I like it a lot, just because there's so much variety, and it's not a desk job. I can't sit here all day. That would drive me crazy. So let's see how I got here. I would say that I took the scenic route, because I thought I was going to go be a classical musician. So I went to undergrad for piano, and then I changed to psychology and French. And then from there, I thought I took a few years off from school, and then decided to get a master's degree at American University in arts administration. And at that time, I thought that I would work in a theater or performance art setting, but um, the possibilities of stable employment at the time, and maybe, and sadly, probably even now, it wasn't that great. So my advisor at the time said, "Why don't you audit a graphic design class?" So I said, "Oh, sure, that sounds great." And so next thing you know, I just audit a couple of classes, and then I decide to I got work as a silk screener in Adams Morgan back when the city was a little more grittier than it is now. But so I did that for a while, and so that provided a sort of a non-computer background for graphic design. And then from there, I could tell that that industry was changing, and so I started to send feelers out and was able to get the job at the zoo. And then from the zoo, I was able to move over here to the museum. I've always been interested in museum work from all the time. So, but I wasn't quite aware that you could actually, do part of the exhibit, and put it up and all that. Wasn't aware of that possibility, but I'm glad that I found it. And it's been great to see the evolution of graphic design as well, since I started a while ago, probably before some of you were born. But anyway, it's always been different and interesting. So I'm grateful for that. And let's see, what I like best is there's the physical aspect to the job that to me is it adds to it. I would have to say the hardest part during COVID was for me to just work at home in a room there. I just couldn't do it. So I was happy to start to come back and go up and down the stairs, etc. And so as far as sort of an unexpected skill set that some people have been talking about, there's a lot of math on the fly that you have to do so you bring over like a giant sign, and you in your mind, even though you have the measurements, it's sometimes deceiving. A piece of artwork's much smaller, just like in Spinal Tap, or bigger, or like anyway. So you have to sort of do quick calculations, but it always works out because you do the layouts, in a to scale form. So, but it's still surprising sometimes. And as far as advice, I would say that you have to keep all your options open. You just don't know, life it's not always a linear path. Sometimes there's a branch and you take it over there and go this way, because you just don't know. You don't want to rule anything out. And I think that you'll find your way. It's just, it might take a while. It takes longer for certain people than others. Certainly took me a few, it led to a similar path, but where I ended up, but it kind of, you're not sure along the way, but it's good to try new things. So that would be my advice. Just keep your options open. And as Virginia said, you have to be something you're passionate about, because you have to, get up in the morning and just be ready to go and enjoy what you're doing, because you'll be there for a long time. So, for at least 8-9 hours a day and continued. So I'm grateful to the Smithsonian for having had so many opportunities to try different things, and especially at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. It's just been great, and we have an excellent team here. So thanks for the opportunity to be on this panel. It's a great honor to be with the other 4 panelists as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Grace. And last but not least, we have Karen Ciatris, Senior Designer here at SAM. Karen graduated with a bachelor's degree in art history from Middlebury College and a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree in graphic design from Maine College of Art. She is a senior designer in the publications department at the Smithsonian American Art Museum. Since 2000, she has been happily designing some of SAM's most celebrated catalogs, including those of the landmark exhibitions Between Worlds, The Art of Bill Traylor, and Alexander von Humboldt, Art, Nature, and Culture. She is the past winner of the American Alliance of Museums Francis Smythe Revenell Prize, the Franny, and many other awards.
Hi there. Thank you, Jeff. Thanks so much for joining us today. As Jeff has told you, my name is Karen Ciatris, and I am a graphic designer in the publications department. And I often tell people that I have the best job in the museum. I'll tell you why in a minute, but first a little bit about my background. I majored in art history in college and interned at the Hirshhorn Museum the summer before I graduated. My role there was to help the museum's editor with fact-checking and proofreading publications like exhibition brochures and the members' newsletter. In those days, I carried a sketchbook with me everywhere. This was before you could just pull out your phone and snap a picture of whatever interested you. So I would go outside at lunchtime and spend some time drawing on the National Mall. One day, the museum's docent coordinator, whose office I shared, said to me, "You know what you should be? You should be an art director." I said, "What's an art director?" She said, "It's the person in a company who decides what everything looks like." Listen, I went to a liberal arts college. I had never even heard of graphic design, much less art directors, but it sounded good. So I guess I tucked it away, and years later, without really intending to, I ended up following her advice. I went back to school and got a second bachelor's degree in graphic design, and now here I am, deciding what things look like in an art museum. To be clear, there are many designers who work here, like Grace, whom you just heard from, and others, and we all focus in different areas. I work in the publications department, which means I design printed materials. The most important tools of my trade are creativity and problem solving, along with a willingness to keep experimenting and coming up with different solutions. This might mean designing 10, 20, or 68 covers for a book. Yes, that really happened before we find one that all stakeholders agree on. The second most important tools I use every day are InDesign and Photoshop software running on a Macintosh. I spend most of my time designing exhibition catalogs like this one, hot off the press. I work closely with curators who write the books and with editors who polish the text and help to manage the overall project. Along the way, I also work with people who locate images for the book, and often with photographers who shoot the artworks, as well as colleagues in different departments who have a stake in raising money for the book or publicizing it or writing the contracts to get the printer and other outside providers paid. I also work with colleagues who are designing features for the related exhibition or the museum's website that all need to have a coordinated look for the same exhibition. So the process of producing a book starts anywhere from 6 months to a year before the books are printed and delivered. My work begins in earnest when I get the text and images from the editor. And the first thing I do is read the manuscript, or at least skim it if time is short, to get a handle on what the book is about, what the major points are, what themes might inspire the design, and so on. Often I'll start by geeking out on typefaces, which means to me researching the subject and finding fonts that are somehow connected to it, much like what Grace told you. So for example, the book I just showed you is about American artists in Venice, Italy around the turn of the 20th century. The font I chose was designed in 1915, so around the same time, by an American typographer, and it was based on books that were printed in Venice during the Renaissance. You can't always make that close of a connection between the typeface and the art that you're representing, but Fonts have history and they have personality too, and you want to find something that harmonizes with the artwork and doesn't compete with it. So after that, it's on to the process of arranging the text and images on the page. This might start with creating what we call a grid that provides the structure for the design and unifies every page throughout the book. You have to decide the size and shape of the book, which you might do according to the art that's in it. Then you have to make decisions about the text columns. How wide are they? Are there 1, 2, or 3 columns on a page? And how much space is between them? You'll need some splashy chapter openers. What are those going to look like? And how about the table of contents, the page that thanks the donors, the title page, the copyright page, and every page in between? Where are you going to place the captions for all those illustrations? And those pesky page numbers, where will they go? You also have to decide what kind of paper the book will be printed on, what kind of cloth or other material will be used for the cover, and the end leaves and everything else, right down to the little ribbon that covers the edges of the pages at the top and bottom of the spine. This one happens to be white, but there are dozens of choices of solid colors and stripes, and sometimes that is my favorite decision of the whole process. By the time I'm making these decisions, I'm in close contact with the printer who's actually going to physically produce the book. Color proofs go back and forth from me to the printer as we try to represent the art as accurately as possible. One important part of my job is to be there in person at the printing plant while the books are on press, making sure that the printing is clean, the color reproductions look great, and that everything goes according to plan, so that ideally, when the books are delivered, the only surprise is that everything looks so much better than we even imagined. So where does this magical process of turning electronic files into printed books take place? Well, here's where my claim of best job in the museum comes in. Most of the printers we work with are located in Italy. As perks go, a week or 10 days spent working in Italy is pretty hard to beat. Things have changed a lot in the time that I've worked here. In the early 2000s, everyone was predicting that ebooks were the future and print would be dead within a few years. Luckily, that has not happened, and I don't think it will anytime soon. Technology changes constantly, but 200 years from now, this book will still be here. And anyone, regardless of operating system, will still be able to pick it up and read it. So if any of you are thinking that designing books for a museum sounds like a great job for a creative person, I'm here to tell you it is. And if I could offer you one piece of advice for your design career, it would be this: collaborate, seek input, don't get defensive, listen to the feedback you're given, and figure out how you can use it to improve your design. In design, 2 heads are always better than 1. Just running your ideas by a colleague or a design-savvy friend will unlock possibilities and inspiration that you could never come up with on your own. Thanks so much for being here today. Thanks to all my amazing colleagues who made this presentation possible. And if you have any questions, feel free to meet us in the breakout rooms afterwards.
Thank you, Karen, and to you all for taking the time to share your experiences and background with the audience.